What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Yesic, or at least what's going to become Yesic. He's not exactly your everyday bard. This is a model from the August Patreon release of Printed Obsession, and this is for a competition in which they're giving away a Frozen Sonic Mini, so I figure I may as well throw my hat in the ring for it. And past that, the backstory on this guy is pretty good. I'll get to that a little later on. I'll leave another reminder at the end of the video, but after you're done watching this one, go ahead and look in the description box below. I'll have links to a lot of the other creators that are doing the same mini. When I talked to Yesic and figured out that his model coming out was a bard, I had a little bit of inspiration. I've been listening to the Wheel of Time series on audiobook, and immediately I wanted to do this guy's cloak up like the Gleeman cloaks from there. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the Gleemen in there were like the traveling bards. They would cover their cloaks in a bunch of patches, a lot of ornate, bright colors, helped them get attention and show off a little bit. Since this thing just had such a nice big open cloak to work with, I wanted to try something a little different besides, a one color wash highlight, and I really wanted to just play around and have some fun with it. Inside this cloak I've got blue, golden yellow, purple, and bold pyro red. I had to stop myself there. I figured if I got too many colors into this, it was just going to become a muted, muddy mess. Next up is some light umber. I got this on these fashionable leggings. I can't really call them boots because they don't cover the feet. My first thought for the hair was, since I already had white up there, I would just go ahead and wash in this black color, let it sink into the recesses, tint the upper. I was hoping for a really nice transition of kind of like an older gray hair. Next up, I grabbed my purple, and I decided to put that on the inner liner of the cloak. I wanted that to be a solid unified color. For this tunic, I just mixed up my black and white to get a nice gray tone, and then I varied the amount of white in there to create the highlights. In order to keep things from getting lost inside this cloak, I just went in with my black, thinned it down really nice so it flowed, and then used that to line each and every panel. It really helps break it up and show off each color. In order to get a little bit more visual interest into this big back panel of the cloak, I went in and did some cross hatching. I used each base color, added a lot of white into it, diluted it down so it got a nice tint, and then put that across the top as a hatch pattern. For his loot and his belt, I'm going to be doing this in light umber. This is a little bit of that backstory I was telling you about. Yesic is indeed a bard, not your typical bard. His favorite thing to do is to conjure up his favorite loot and crack it across somebody's skull. Not exactly your standard musician. For this step, I've laid down some of that white plus light umber mix on the top edge, kept it nice and wet, and now I'm coming in with light umber, just feathering them both together, getting a nice wet blend going. To me, there's few things more satisfying than watching that wet blend happen. Here it wasn't quite living up to my expectations, so I just decided to come back in and base coat it all in solid black. In order to shade the skin tones, I got on my Resin flesh shade and put it on a little bit sparingly, trying to make sure it didn't pool. Once that was dried up, I just grabbed my original flesh tone and came back in and did some initial highlights. The face on this is the one part of this model that I wasn't super happy about. I'm sure that rather than being the creator's fault, it's probably on my end. I probably didn't have my settings dialed in as well as I should have. Getting the black-white mixed up again, coming back in with the gray that I wanted this hair to be initially. I'm just using the side of the brush, making sure that that black stays in the recesses. And as if he wasn't interesting enough, he's got a thumb that shoots fire. In order to try and sell the effect, and to break it up from the rest of the hand, I decided to put blue in at the base, give that nice hot fire look down there, and it breaks up the skin tone, and then the red and the yellows I'm using up top. Unfortunately, I didn't capture the painting of this bottle. It's one of my favorite parts of the mini. In order to capture this effect, I just blended my reds, made it brighter at the top, darker at the bottom, and then put some blue above the surface line, just to make it look like it's a blue bottle. One of the things that I wanted to show off on this was a little bit of OSL. It's pretty reserved, pretty controlled. I'm just using a thinned down yellow, same one I've used on the rest of the model. I just thinned it down to a nice glaze consistency, and I'm putting that anywhere that the light would hit. If you're doing this kind of stuff, just keep in mind it's going to be brightest near the source, and the source is going to be the absolute brightest. Since I already had blue and red on a bottle, I decided to make one on the left blue, one on the right red. Getting the base ready, I put some of this black pigment down. I wanted it to look like it was soot, ash. Maybe he'd thrown one of these things before. This kind of thing helps to tie him into that base. For all the metals, I'm keeping it pretty simple. I've got copper as my base color, and then I'm just coming in and mixing in a little bit of silver up on the high points. So Yesik is the D&D character for Yesik. Pretty creative, right? If you don't know who he is, he's one of the guys that does a lot of the pre-supported minis for a lot of these Patreons. His stuff's really good, supports come out really nice. Time to get him on the base. Couple more touch-ups. Saw that the laces still needed some work, and then the highlights on the back of the legs needed a little more. And since I love using pigments, I brought in one more just to break it up and give a little variation. That's it, folks. One bard with a smashed loot and a Molotov cocktail later, this one is done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a really fun project to work on, all the way from the printing through to the final varnish. If you got any questions or comments, put them down below. Otherwise, look in that description below and join me in watching some of these other guys paint this model up. And I'll see you guys in the next one.